Welcome to another episode of Tactical Analysis, and in this video we are going to be looking at the Prince Exo3 Graphite 93 mid. So that is the version of this racket with the 93 square inch head, and I'll do the usual. I'll pull up the Tennis Warehouse tools and have a look at some of the stats surrounding the racket, and then I will detail my on-court experiences from the positives to the negatives, and then we'll look at some suitable player types that may find some joy from using this racket. So let's get into the video. And the first thing that stands out to me is the head size at 93 square inches, which is a rarity nowadays. You won't find many rackets with a smaller head size, especially now. I don't think there are any in production, to be honest. All the 90s and anything below 93s I think are now discontinued from what I have seen, so that makes it rare. And another stat that pops out to me is the static weight at 345.6 grams, which is above average, so we need to bear that in mind. The swing weight at 335, again above average for a stock racket, and then we've got the twist weight at 13.2 alongside a vibration frequency of 145.4 hertz. So a little bit above average, I would say, but not too far into the extremes, and coupled with a suitable string, we shouldn't have any issues with discomfort. So yeah, those are some of the stats I wanted to look at straight away, because it is a demanding racket. It's got a small head size and the static weight is very high. So yeah, it's mainly aimed at advanced players, or at least players that can generate their own power. And so yeah, it's a small percentage of the tennis playing population. But if we look at some more stats I'd like to highlight, we've got a shot speed recorded at 65.6 miles an hour. So that's pretty high. I guess it's not too surprising given the static weight and swing weight, combined with the vibration frequency being a little on the above average side. And we've got a swing speed of 49.1 miles an hour. Let's move on to a few final stats I wanted to highlight, and that is the string pattern at 16 by 18. So a small head but a very open string pattern, so that should facilitate the mains movement on the crosses if it is snapback you're looking for, and access to more spin. And then finally we've got a width at 24.4 millimeters. So interestingly enough, even though this is a 93 square inch head and below average obviously, the actual width of the racket is in line with some of the, say, Babolats at 100 square inches that also have a width of 24.4 millimeters, meaning that you can swing at sharper upward angles and not have to worry too much about clipping the frame. So that's a pretty interesting stat I want to highlight. Despite it being a small head size, you do have that margin for error to swing at sharp angles. So yeah, if we move on to my on-court experience, I'll go into some of the positives and some of the negatives. And the first positive I want to mention is the stability, and this is probably due to a number of factors. The first being the high static weight at 345.6 grams, and you combine that with the higher swing weight at 335, and you get a racket that can easily plow through even the heaviest of shots from your opponents. And it was particularly helpful on faster incoming serves. So when I was having to return those, whether it be blocking back or even hitting through a heavier kick serve, I found I didn't have too many problems getting the racket through the ball and through that extra weight from a powerful opponent, which is a good thing. It's a good thing. And also we've got the higher vibration frequency, which keeps things stable. So that's 145 hertz. So all in all, those three things, they combine to make a very stable racket, especially in stock form. You probably won't find a racket in stock form much more stable than this. So a pretty good platform if that is what you're looking for in a racket. But yeah, I do want to mention though, it's very important to get the string correct. Now, me personally, I used a string called Yonex Polytour Tough, and if I remember off the top of my head correctly, the stiffness was around 193.7 pounds. And I found it had really good control over the length and the trajectory. And this was indoors, and I find doing these types of tests indoors is even better as the air is thinner and the ball travels further. So it's a tougher test for the setup in terms of length, and if there are any weaknesses in the setup, you will definitely find them when you're playing indoors. So yeah, if you use a string that's not much lower than that sort of stiffness, I would say that really is the platform, because I haven't really tested this racket with many strings below that. I've used Wilson Revolve 15 and that played reasonably well, but I thought it started to excel once I used the Yonex Polytour Tough, which had a stiffness of 193.7 pounds. So yeah, don't go too far below that. If you do and you find that the racket does not play as well as you'd like, I've already warned you, so you do you. Right, let's move on to some of the negatives, and probably not too much of a surprise. It's the below average spin. And again, when you have a racket with high static weight and a high swing weight in stock form, it's going to be difficult, or even more difficult, to get the racket head speed going, as opposed to if you used a lighter racket, obviously. And so the spin is below average in comparison to many other rackets, in fact most other rackets out on the market nowadays. And even with the open string pattern, it doesn't sort of counterbalance that. So I found lowering the string tension or playing with an open string pattern, it doesn't really make too much of a difference. In my experience, there is no way to use spin to counteract a setup with poor length control. So you can't outspin poor length control. That has to come first, the length control. And then you can use spin as a weapon, whether it be to impart more pace and get the ball to dip before the baseline, whether you're using angles, drop shots, or whatever. The length control has to come first. You can't have a setup with poor length control and attempt to use spin to kind of counteract that poor length control. It just doesn't work well in my experience ever, and I've done it hundreds of times. So if you figure out a way, please let me know, because I'd love to hear it. I'd love to test that setup. That would be amazing. It just doesn't work. You cannot outspin poor length control. Right, so let's move on to the next negative. It's not really a negative, actually, it's more of an idea, I thought. I feel like this racket, because it is so stable and it's more suited to players that hit with flatter trajectories or just flatter shots overall, as you're not really using racket head speed to generate spin as a weapon. It probably would be more suited to a denser string pattern, whether that be a 16x20 or an 18x20, ideally, because we can minimize that string movement, the mains on the crosses, as much as possible to really maximize the trajectory control, and so get that ball to zip through the surface, keeping that ball low over the net and making it more difficult to attack. Of course, we can be more aggressive and hit with higher speeds if we can consistently keep that ball low over the net, and it's generally more easier to do so when you've got a denser pattern or you are using higher string tensions, higher string stiffnesses. Anything that minimizes string movement generally gives you more trajectory control, and so you can play lower over the net, play with lower margin as well, and that gives you the chance to play with more pace, as the ball doesn't have to dip from as high a height, obviously. So yeah, that really was the only negative I thought about this setup, was the lower than average spin. And that brings me on to the suitable player types. And just to piggyback off of pretty much what I just said, flatter hitters, those that use lower trajectories, are going to enjoy this setup, this racket, much more than those who want to impart a lot of spin on the ball. And so adding on to that, players that compete on surfaces that are generally lower bouncing and that favor lower trajectories, they will find that they get more out of this racket, much more in fact, than players that play on higher bouncing surfaces like gritty hard courts or clay courts, as the racket doesn't really allow you to hit with the type of spin that I personally would like to exploit the surfaces, to exploit that kick off the clay, or to exploit that kick off of the slower or the grittier, higher bouncing hard courts. So yeah, suitable players, those that hit flatter. And that brings me to the end of this video. I want to thank everyone for watching. If you do have any questions, drop them in the comments. I'll do my best to answer as many as I can, or all of them if I get the chance. And if you've got anything to add, just drop them in the comments as well, as this was a really interesting racket for me. It's because it suits my play style. I do hit flatter naturally from the back of the court, and I thought I got a little bit more out of it than the average player, and so I found it interesting. Cool racket. It looks cool as well, and the prices for it are not extortionate like you see on a lot of newer rackets that are coming out nowadays. I won't name anything. They're pretty easy to find. So yeah, it's still available out there in abundance, I would say. Last time I checked on eBay, there were quite a few, and they were all under £100 in good condition. So quite a cool racket, especially if you are a flatter hitter. So yeah, that's the end of this video. I want to thank everyone for watching. If you did enjoy it, it might be worth checking out our other content and the future videos that I've got planned for release soon. So yeah, hopefully I'll see you all there. And until then, everyone, take care.